It's all about like really being comfortable in your own self and accepting yourself. And that comes with a full awareness of what causes you to be insecure and overcoming it by addressing the root issues as opposed to putting band-aids on them. Before we get started on today's episode, I'd like to introduce to you our Black-owned business of the week, where we showcase quality Black-owned businesses for you to support every week. This week's business is the VIP Lounge Barbershop and Spa, co-owned by the 757's own Emmett Downing. The VIP Lounge Barbershop and Spa has two convenient locations here in Norfolk and offers a premium grooming experience, including the freshest fades, starter locks, and waxing services for the ladies. If you're looking to upgrade your self-care regimen, be sure to book an appointment with one of their many talented staff, including Yaz, Wayne, or Emmett himself.
In recent years, as our collective consciousness continues to rise, masculinity finds itself under a microscope more so than previous years, with men and women giving their hot take alike. On this week's episode of the Infusion Breakdown Show, the Breakdown crew sat down among ourselves to discuss some of the biggest challenges men face, as well as the topic of being the little spoon. Let's see what we come up with.
So the question we have for today, what's the biggest challenge men face? Comment below, let us know your opinion. We also have timestamps in the description below as always. Be sure to check them out.
Cool. Well, welcome back to season 4, episode 101. Happy to be back with you guys. I'm going to start today's question off. So the biggest challenge that I feel men face is actually confidence. And confidence dictates the opportunities that we're able to capitalize on, whether it be career opportunities or opportunities with women. And both tend to manifest themselves in negative self-talking yourself out of these opportunities that are presented to you. And I feel like it's far more prevalent when facing rejection from a woman than it is from an employer, for example. I feel like people or men rather, tend to take that more personally. And a lot of what men issues are at the crux of it is the fact that men are human, and that a lot of the issues that women face, they're more widely accepted, such as like insecurities and the like. And insecurities themselves by nature, they directly affect your confidence. And I was thinking through this, and I was thinking, what is the answer? And it depends largely on what the actual insecurity is that's at the root causing the lack of confidence. And it could be, for example, a really common one. I was speaking to some of my other friends about what are some of the biggest issues that they face as men. And a common one was the differential in between where they are in life versus where they want to be. And if you think about it, that's where a large percentage of a man's value is derived from, his success and his ability to provide. And I think that extends far beyond just strictly in a financial sense. We could talk about that later, another episode maybe. But that was something that was a recurring habit, or pattern that I've noticed. And so the answer to that would be to devise a plan and actually work towards where you see yourself and envision yourself in the future. And it's a direct correlation between competence and confidence. So over time, you will gradually accrue that. And then the other part that I was thinking about is insecurity could stem from physical stature. So anything that you feel like is a part of your personal being. So like height, weight, teeth, hair, things like that. And I guess my personal experience with the stature part. So I remember when I was younger in 4th grade, I used to wear wristbands because I didn't like being on the lankier side, and I didn't like looking like super skinny. So I would wear like the wristbands, and after a while, like I think I may have stopped doing that after like a year or so. But it was just something that I had done because I was insecure about my size at that point in time. And then so all throughout school, I was still on the slimmer side, but I started to exercise more as the older I got, and then started to gain weight. And then present day, like recently I ran into an old, classmate of mine, somebody I played football with back in high school. And he didn't recognize me because I was so much bigger than what I used to be. Like I think like when I graduated, I was maybe like 140, 145 maybe, and all the way up to like 190. So he was pretty surprised. And that was, I guess, what my plan to overcome that particular insecurity. So I felt more comfortable about myself because I knew that at the heart of it, it was something that I didn't like that I could fix. And then also another thing that a lot of men are insecure about would be balding. So there was a point in time after I cut my hair where I noticed that my hair wasn't as thick as it used to be, as thinner. And it was a period of about 2 months where I would look in the mirror and I would just be angry. I would be pissed because my hair was thinner. And it was just like, it was like an existential crisis. I don't have words to display or convey how angry that made me. But I come to realize there was nothing I could do about that. It was a genetic thing. I have uncles that are bald, and it was like, just accept it, because the worst thing you could do about an insecurity is trying to hide it. It's like to take ownership fully of the things that you can't. So I think the best strategy really is kind of like what the Serenity Prayer says: accept the things that you can't change, and have the courage to change the things that you can. And so once I realized that, it was just like, this is what it is. I mean, if it happens, I'm gonna cut it before I start looking like George Jefferson, because that was non-negotiable. And I was gonna keep like lifting and stuff, because it was like, okay, well, you could either be Eustace Bagg from Courage the Cowardly Dog, or you could be Dwayne Johnson. And I was like, okay, well, I think that's pretty much non-negotiable right there. So I set my path for myself. So it's all about like really being comfortable in your own self and accepting yourself, and that comes with a full awareness of what causes you to be insecure and overcoming it by addressing the root issues as opposed to putting band-aids on them. So that's why I say confidence is one of the biggest issues that faces men, or if not the, because it's a very multidimensional problem. Was that what you're gonna say, Josh?
No, I considered it though. I did
Okay.
write it down, but it wasn't really my biggest. I do agree with you though. I do agree that confidence is. I don't know what the biggest, but I do feel it is big though. As far as me, I know when it comes to confidence, I think I suffered from that more when I was growing up. As far as the whole not having the confidence and actually coming into who I am now, so that's really the big thing about confidence right there. So I do believe you on that. That's why I wrote it down too, because I was going to talk about me actually growing up without actual confidence, but it's about what you said, like accepting who you are and just be you. I mean, that's beautiful right there. So, but yeah.
All right, Jermaine.
Did you have something, Des? You can go first.
Nah, I agreed. I definitely agree with him. It's funny he mentioned the balding thing, because that's something that I've always been, I'm not gonna say fearful of, but that's always something that I'm like not looking forward to. So I definitely feel you on the balding thing. It's like I always tell my mom that, like, as much as she complains about my hair look being nappy, that it's black hair, but at the end of the day, like I'm a rock it until it can't grow no more. So I just deal with it for a few more years.
Does either side of your family have a history of baldness?
Yeah, my dad's bald, and then people always say like your like
Your maternal side?
male pattern baldness comes from your
mom.
maternal side. Yeah, your mom's dad, but I don't know my mom's
dad.
dad. So yeah, I can't tell you.
I mean,
Like,
my family would support that, because my dad has a full head of hair. Like, his hair looks great. My granddad has a full head of hair. He'll be 76 this week, and mine is thinning. So this is maternal side of my DNA.
Yeah.
Also, quick side note. So my cousin, he told me about these specific biotin vitamins that he's been taking, and so he started thinning around like 6 years ago. And I'm telling you, he'd taken them, and so you would not be able to tell that his hair was ever thinning. Like, he has a full, beautiful head of hair. And I'm not saying it's gonna make your hair grow back or anything like that, but his hair looks good. So, biotin vitamins.
is it the Nature Health ones?
I think he said Spring Valley.
I used to take biotin.
Why are men exactly so insecure about the whole baldness thing? Is it because societal pressure? What is it exactly? Just like you just don't want to look bald? Like you just like your hair? Like what is it?
A lot of men take pride in their hair. Like, when I had longer hair, when I had my braids, it was fresh. Like, when I got them done, it was the presentation. I like that. The waves. It's a large part of appearance, individuality, your expression, the way you style it. There's so many different things you could do, but once genetics and biology rob you of the opportunity to do so, you're no longer making the choice. You just got the Mr. Clean cut. So,
You try Rogaine.
does that even work though?
I don't know. Yeah. You can go.
I was gonna say I was gonna say, I think the for me, it's like getting used to the person, because you look completely different with hair than you do without hair. And then once you go bald, like, there is no growing back. Even if when it does grow back, it grows in an area that's like specifically noticeable that, hey, like, you've been stressed out. Somebody done stressed you out. So that's what you mentioned, Brian, with the George Jefferson cut. So yeah, I definitely agree with the balding. It's not high up on my list because I think I'm gonna spend more years bald than I am gonna spend with hair. So perspective, I guess. But the biggest challenge for me, for men from my standpoint, I think, is the ability to how do I want to put it? The ability to healthily express their emotions. And the reason why I say that is because I think for the most part, men, just like women, are, giving or afforded the opportunity, from their adolescent periods, and then of course, through childbirth, toddler, grade school, whatever. Like, you're afforded the opportunities to express yourself, and from an emotional standpoint. But I think that whether it be from your parents' perspective on how you as a man or how you as a child are expressing your emotions, I think that it has negative connotation to it. Because for the most part, it's like, hey, you got to be the man of the house. Way before you even know what the man of the house does, you're told, like, hey, you got to be the man of the house. Or your parents might say, be quiet before I give you something to cry about. Like, you never really get that chance to fully go through the emotions. And I, like, one thing that I always tell people today, I was like, you have to be kind to yourself and afford yourself the opportunity to feel every emotion from start to finish. Because if you continuously rob yourself of that opportunity, you're going to keep going through these numbing periods of your life to where you're missing out on things because you're not present. You're either going to be too focused on what happened in the past, or you're going to be too focused on what's going to happen in the future. Of course, past is what people like to relate to depression. Future is always, related to anxiety. So I always tell people now, because even for me, like, I really didn't start processing my healthy emotions until I was in my 20s. So you got to think, like, a lot of men don't ever get to that point because they take on different responsibilities that constantly constantly pushes them to compartmentalize and not allow them to truly feel everything that comes with it. And then of course they take on somebody else's emotions, whether it be marriage or whether it be a kid. And then of course from there it just trickles down, and you're consistently compartmentalizing rather than truly allowing yourself to feel everything. Because yeah, you may feel the joys at that time, but as we I think Brian and I've had this conversation before, like, abstaining from situations that have cause you to think the way they do or feel the way they do doesn't ever negate them. It doesn't ever push it to the side. It just constantly gets well, it does get pushed to the side in a sense, but it doesn't ever erase it. So at some point there is going to be triggers in life that pushes those emotions that you've never taken the time to address. And so that will always be my thing. And I think I say that as a parent because I even think on my end, like, it's so much easier to just be aggressive and, well, I won't say aggressive, but assertive to your child and ask, control their tantrums or this, that, and third, because you don't want to deal with it at the moment. But it's terrible when, it becomes a repetitive thing. And then you're constantly forcing them to suppress their emotions or however they're feeling to, give you a little bit of satisfaction for the moment because you don't want to deal with it. Like, that stuff, as crazy as it sounds, like us talking about it now, like, that's a generational thing. Your dad may not have been afforded opportunity to properly express his emotions, and that's trickled down to you. And of course, if you don't catch it, then that trickles down to your kid. So I would say that's the biggest thing, because people do some fucked up shit when they're not checked in emotionally. And that was one of the biggest things for me, because confidence honestly for me came when I just understood, like, how the channels and aspects of life go. Like, once you understand that, like, you really just put into perspective, like, people's opinions don't mean shit. And I had that mentality, like, in going into high school. Like, I really didn't care. what people thought.
The reason I didn't have the emotional, I guess, answer that you did, I thought about that and considered it heavily. I think that it's far more acceptable now for a man to be emotionally vulnerable, and I think that we've talked about it. Not just us as the breakdown crew, but as people. I think it's more in the ether. Like, it's not something that's taboo anymore. And
I definitely agree. Like, it is more talked about, but it's one of those things where, like, practice or theory versus practice. Like,
Yes.
I think in theory people are becoming more accepting of it, but they're not putting it into practice. Like,
yes,
or they're putting it into practice when it's too late.
because they don't know what exactly it looks like when it's in practice, like you were saying. And I kind of want to ask you about that first, but there's twofold. So you had mentioned that you didn't fully start going through the full range of emotions until your early 20s. Why was that? Did you feel like you were stifled in an emotional fashion early on by yourself or other external factors?
Yeah, I think that, and I just think I was really good at compartmentalizing. Like, I've seen my dad do it a lot because my parents are Navy. My parents are naval officers. My dad always out to sea. My mom was an RN. So, like, when you're high-ranking officials or officers in the Navy, like, you do a lot and you deal with a lot, is because a lot of the people that are under you are 4 or 5 years older than me, so they're late teens, early 20s, not necessarily the most responsible. So it's kind of like one of those things to where you have to, and I can say this with perspective now, but when they're dealing with a lot through work, they don't have a lot of, like, patience when it comes to at home. And I mean, that's just the reality of what it is for a lot of military kids. Is like they learn to compartmentalize just as good as the parents do. It's just that if you don't go into the military, that skill level of compartmentalizes just becomes unnecessary, because you're almost inclined to feel like, for me, I would say when I started smoking, like, it allowed my mind to go deeper into thoughts that I normally would just skip over. And then, of course, it's like once you start going down that path, then you start unraveling things. And if those things become unraveled without you, like, if they begin to unravel without you coming to the correct conclusion, or rectifying it mentally, then it sits there, kind of like what I said. Like, it sometimes it'll get swept to the side, but it's going to reappear at a later date. And that's really what I had experienced.
My second part,
hard to put into words, man, because I never really, like, explain my process, but mentally I can, like, run it down.
if it's difficult for you to articulate, I would definitely recommend you, just on your own time in the near future, or whenever you do have some free time, is to actually, like, write down the thoughts. Because once you have it written down, like, it's almost like a conversation with yourself, and you can correct yourself as you're writing it, because it's like you're verbalizing on paper, and as you're writing it, you're processing it. So it's like, okay, well, does this even make sense? This is not clear. What do I need to clarify?
I actually started that. So that was probably going to be what I recommend at the end. But last Sunday, I just did a full write down. But what I was writing down was more or less my trading plan and goals for the week and goals for the rest of the month. So I could always, kind of like the accountability thing, but I also do use it as like a check-in to where I come in and I write down whatever is currently, on my mind. And sometimes I'll go back and reference it. Like, if I wrote something down that was really, really good or inspirational, like, one thing that I wrote down is being the best version of myself will afford me the best life possible. And I just keep rereading that, because I think it becomes a positive affirmation if you see it a lot, or if you say it a lot. Constant reminder.
My second question that I was going to ask you was in relation to what exactly does healthy emotional expression look like? Because, like you said, it's very well talked about in a theoretical realm, but in terms of practice, we don't see the reflection of it. So what does it look like from a man's perspective for us to healthily express ourselves, and then for someone, say a woman or another man, just an outside party, to be receptive to that and supportive?
So for me, it was therapy. will say that a lot of the conversations that I had that were like minor, I had them with my boys, and obviously when you high at 2 o'clock in the morning, you talk just about anything and everything, and you'll be able to come to better conclusions, and you'll find that your friends will be able to come to better conclusions and get that closure that they may be looking for. So I will say that was very beneficial for me at that age. But I will also say therapy is one of the things too, because you have a party that is not vested in anything. They don't care about all these factors or whatever may have possibly. They care about what was the cause. Like there's no beating around the bush in therapy. There's no, yeah, well, you thought it was like this, but it happened this way. There's like, no, it happened this way. It happened this way for a reason. And this will be the best path possible to get to the next, stepping in life. Like there's definitely questions like probing to make you try and understand the whys, but they're not centered around the whys. They're centered around what you're actually feeling and how do you process those, and what are you doing? Like I remember the biggest thing for me, I think I've said it up here before, is like when my therapist asked who I was, I couldn't give him a satisfactory answer. And part of that was because I was so consumed with, negative thoughts and emotions that I mean, some people are so consumed with it that you don't really know who you are or what virtues or values you bring. And that was the biggest thing. It does take a long time though. I'm not going to sit here and like preach, oh yeah, go to therapy, this, that, and the third. Like some people, it requires an hour of honesty that you might not be comfortable with, because it requires complete vulnerability.
Absolutely. I haven't actually taken therapy, but I'm definitely considering it, just to have assistance in sifting through my thoughts by a trained professional, because we tend to think that we can do it ourselves, and to a degree you can, but they're trained in doing that. And on the flip side of what I just asked, did you want to contribute something to the side of what does it look like from a supportive perspective, from the outside of the person actually expressing themselves?
I think for me is just constantly give space. Like I think we see people, want to be in a comforting role to where you're trying to pull something out of somebody. And I think that there are times where you do need to be steadfast and resilient with checking in and, getting help. But I think, there is times where you have to give people their space and allow them to process their emotions. Like for me, I always tell people that there may be times where I don't say nothing, and I might just need to process my emotions, because if I speak on them right away, they're going to come out in a manner that might be confrontational or, projective. And I want to present whatever is bothering me in the most clear-cut, articulate way, so we can come to an appropriate solution. Because what a lot of people will do is they'll either bring it up at the wrong time. Like you'll bring up an issue you have with me when I'm bringing up an issue I have with you, and then y'all just become two heads clashing together rather than two minds coming to a collective thought or collective center. So I always will say, like, afford yourself the opportunity to articulate your thoughts, what's bothering you, because it's going to suck. Like you're going to ask why you're feeling this way, but it's better to feel that way for a day or two than feel that way for a lifetime or a year or a couple months, because you're consistently pushing it back, and then it reoccurring at different points. And also
Josh,
write it down too. Like
Josh,
give somebody
did you
a journal.
Have any basically the best gift you can give someone. Josh, did you have any follow-up for Des?
No, not necessarily a follow-up, but as far as what he was talking about, as far as men not being able to express their emotions, I definitely agree with him. I had something like that. What I had was really like succumbing to toxic masculinity, basically. And that's basically, it's not always men's fault, because like you said, that's a generational thing. That's how they was raised. That's how it come from. But that's just what I had, as far as men not being able to express their emotions and having to compete with each other because they feel they're competitive and for that masculinity and everything like that. So that's really what I came up with as far as like emotions, because that's really what I was thinking of. But confidence, yeah, confidence is definitely one of them.
So your answer was like the same as Des, basically.
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. Because of emotions. Because I feel that's really the biggest challenge men come up with. Because, like Des said, if you're not good emotionally, you can do some fucked up shit. And usually, with men being in position of power, they do that fucked up shit to women, and then that carries on and could be a whole chain reaction of just fucked up shit happening in society. Mainly because you're not good yourself. You have toxic masculinity.
I'll ask you the same questions I asked Des just now. So, what was inhibiting you from, or first off, were you afflicted by that personally?
No, that's the thing. I was always good as far as emotional intelligence. I always knew my emotions. I always knew as far as if I just cry, I'll cry right here. That's fine. As far as like the support system, like the whole therapy thing that Desmond was talking about, I do agree as far as that is actually something that is needed. Maybe sometimes like a guy needs like maybe a shoulder to cry on, actually, like a literal shoulder to cry on, you know, or maybe they just need to talk to somebody about it. But yeah, I was always good as far as emotional intelligence, like from an early age. Like I'm a cry, I'm good. Like I'll go over there and cry, it's fine. Like, and then I'll come back and just be mad. But I was always as far as good as my emotions and understanding that. Basically, what Drake said, showing emotion don't mean I'm a pussy. That's basically what he said. So, yeah, I knew that from an early age. With that.
What do you think about from a supportive role? So, as you as a man expressing yourself, what is something that somebody who cares about you and is in your life can do to adequately support you?
I get what Desmond was saying as far as alone, and I do think that'll work, but I also think it really depends on the person. Like sometimes a person doesn't want to be alone as far as fixing them. Maybe they have to, but sometimes they don't want to be alone. Maybe they do see that actual support system. So I understand what Desmond's talking about, and I do agree that alone is one of them. As far as that, just like support, like making sure you're there for any type of support that the other person needs. I definitely feel.
I think you hit something really on the head there where you were saying it depends on the person. And I think when it comes to dealing with men, so if any women are listening to this trying to get ideas or information and understanding, to understand that it's more important for you to ask, because you can go into a situation with a guy that you're dealing with the assumption that he's more akin to Desmond, who likes to have the additional space, and he may want to be comforted and have more support directly. So to make very large blanket statements, they're good for context and information to what might be going on, but in terms of like specifics, you should definitely just go ahead and ask.
Yeah. Why do you feel women don't do that?
Why do I feel like they don't ask?
Yeah.
Man. Why do I feel like they don't ask? I don't have an answer for you right now. I swear I don't. I'm gonna have to think about that.
It's mind blowing. Like, yeah, wait, why don't they ask?
You're gonna get a text later on this week. I swear you are. Why don't women ask? Do you have any thoughts on why women don't ask and they
why they don't ask
based off like things that pertain to men?
I think they think they know because what I'll say is women are creatures of habits, and they do study a lot of what we do. Like women are very, they're very habitual in the sense like they're very predictable, and I think that women know that they're predictable. And so as much as I think we underestimate their conscious mind. But what I'll say is that I think that they just think that they know a person well enough to try and push the result. Either that or they will tie a prior situation to a current. So as much as I think they're creatures of habit, I think that they're also people that diversify the emotions they're feeling based off of a certain situation. So they will attribute similar actions that happened prior to the current and just assume. But I think it's a lot of things. I don't think that there's just one blanket, because I will say that from experience, like it has been a lot of like when we've had an assumption-based conversation, in the past with women, it's been like, well, you were acting this way, and when you acted this way before, this was your reasoning, not realizing that like my mind could be in a completely different world. Like, just because I'm out of tune with you right now doesn't mean that I'm mad at you. It might be that I'm like struggling with something mentally, either in a deep space, thinking about, you know, side that is bugging me, fear of not being good enough in this world, fear of not living up to myself. I think that's their thing. Like they pay attention to the external act itself, but sometimes don't understand that there's multiple facets to the internal thought process that's producing that.
Like, that's a good explanation. And as far as what you're saying about the creatures of habit thing, I kind of like that kind of trips something in my head, because that's the nature of people. And so why would I assume it would be any different from them? But also I think that any person who has common sense, or I guess basic deductive reasoning, is going to rely on their inferences based off prior information that they have at their disposal. So it could be something as simple as, if a woman has a relationship with a man in the past, they date for 2 or 3 years, she becomes conditioned or becomes used to that, whatever his reaction to things are. She may actually learn that, and then she dates you. You guys have been together for 2 months, and so it's going to take a transition period. She's going to have to get used to different things, because the thing about what I was saying about blanket statements and generalizations, they're good for background information and context to why things might be, but as far as specifics, you are going to need to have the actual conversations, because you could be right or you could be wrong. Like, as a guy, I've made assumptions about a girl I was dating before and been completely wrong, because I thought that she was upset because of one thing, but it had nothing to do with me. And I feel like that's just a part of being human. We just do that. So in terms of like the specific reason why women don't ask, I don't think it's any different than why men don't ask. We're just using our inferences and prior knowledge, and sometimes it's just difficult to have those conversations.
I was about to say, it sounds like a fear that you was in that situation a little bit. The situation you just
fear. What could you explain a little bit more? The
situation you was just talking about.
Why I didn't ask her?
Yeah, I feel like you was scared, or was that? Am I right, or were you like fearful of the answer?
Not really. It was. Okay. She was going through something. I didn't speak to her for like a few days, and so with that, you kind of.
Oh, you just started assuming.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have anything else to do. I couldn't ask the person. Who the hell am I going to ask? She's not answering. So that, I guess that may have been a little bit different, but just going off, we just tend to go off the information that we have, and we're not omnipotent.
You kind of referenced the post that you put on your story, Des, with the things that men wish that women knew, the one that Bryan sent me. You sent it to me, but I already had it up. Like, I already knew we was probably going to talk about it.
Okay, good.
But yeah, it kind of reminded me of that. And when you first put it up, I didn't like go to it, but then I saw it again and I saw people talking about it. Like, I went to it and I started reading. The first one, I was like, yep, that's true. That's true too. Yeah, that's true. And like you said, like, just because I'm sitting here quiet doesn't mean like something's wrong. You know what I mean? Like, I could be thinking of a random scenario in my head or some shit, like, you know. But yeah.
That list. So one of my homegirls, she sent it to me, and she said, "Can I get a guy's perspective on this?" And I kid you not, I went through the list item by item, and I would say the vast majority were true and applied to a situation that I had been in the past before.
Yeah. You know, I think the only one that I didn't agree with is the one that said, "Sometimes I want to be the little spoon." I was like, nah.
You don't like being a little spoon sometimes?
No, sir.
I was against that concept until, like, you ever had like a woman kiss you on your back?
Yeah,
that's one of the top 10 feelings. And that, you know, if you right in the little spoon position, you know, she could right there, right in the spot, right in the middle of your back. That's the only reason I'm willing to negotiate. But for the most part, gotta be big spoon. So I mean, that's negotiable.
Oh my God.
Josh, what was your thoughts on the little spoon item? Was that the only one that you weren't in agreement with?
No, I didn't actually get it the first time I I actually read it. I didn't like get it the first time I read it, but yeah, that's not one of them. Like I think this is like that was the only one I feel that I didn't agree with, but it wasn't like most of them I did agree with it though, like for the most part. Yeah.
Missing out.
You said missing out. This guy.
Yeah.
So I had a few questions to ask you guys. So first off, do you feel like you have an adequate support group? Not like Alcoholics Anonymous, but in terms of the people who you associate yourself with, your friends, the relationships you have. Do you feel like you're adequately supported?
Yes.
For what's required, yes.
That's a Desmond answer if I ever did hear one. For what's required, yes. That's good. I always like to. Well, as a friend, I hope that my friends do feel like that they do have that support, whether it be from myself or the other people who are in their lives. And then I add another question: is do you ever feel like you struggle with living up to the expectation of what it is to be a man?
No, I have no expectation as far as what it is to be a man.
Yeah, I think it's forever evolving.
Well, not
At least
Josh.
present day.
Huh?
I don't know what path I want to go down first. So, Josh, I guess I'll clarify for Josh. So, like the external expectation of not what you think it is to be a man, but what in general, like the blanket overarching what it is to be a man, manhood. That was what I was speaking in reference to. And Des, you said no because the definition of what it is to be a man is constantly evolving, which I do agree with that. Like it's becoming more acceptable, kind of like we were just saying about the emotional vulnerability earlier. So would you be willing to go a little bit more in detail about that?
Yeah, I think what we said before is like we see a lot of things that were previously, I guess you could say, frowned upon, where toxic masculinity is like what we see in the media, this, that, and the third. But we do see a lot more men being open and accepting to the LGBTQ plus community. Whereas before, like when I was growing up, it was like completely frowned upon. I also think that we are seeing men be greater fathers today. I think people, men for the most part have been great fathers, but I think you're seeing now like men taking on more roles where if you have a daughter, you're not afraid to let her do makeup, practice her makeup on you, or you're not afraid to let her paint your nails, or you're not afraid to go to the park with her and have her in your lap going down the slide, like things that and this, that, and the third. I also think that as like men, we're kind of seeing a more conscious form of parenting. Don't get me wrong, I don't think that's with every parent, but I think it's being more pushed now because it's constantly, or it's more apparent now because of social media, and we're seeing how many people went through the same things that you went through as a child, and like you weren't just alone. So you have like more of like an awakening moment for men as children and how they were parented, and now we're seeing men as parents and how they're trying to not necessarily walk on eggshells, but be consistently aware of the thoughts that they have when it comes to how they're parenting their child. Like I think that's a big thing because I don't want to say that it's a lot of kids being born without marriages being without, I guess you could say, ties being knotted, but I think that's with every generation, but I do think that we're seeing a lot more of like men taking the initiative, and that could just be my perspective of it, because I think if you go ask a woman, they'll give you their perspective of it, but it's their perspective as far as how their current situation may be instead of the situation as a whole.
But I guess when you said that the lack of ties that are being knotted, you were speaking
Marriage.
about like the marriages. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think statistically speaking, marriage has been on the decline.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, but I mean, we're still producing kids though, so it's not like
Exactly.
that thing of like you know, fatherless kids. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some fatherless kids, like kids that still deal with that, but you'll see, you know, more men stepping up to the plate, I guess, and, you know, being aware of how they were parented and how even when it comes to this child that's not yours, you want to still, you know, raise this child like it's yours and, you know, be, I guess you could say, consciously aware of your thoughts. Like, that's not to say that it hasn't been happening in the past, but like I said, I think there's just a great resurgence and emphasis on it. Like, I think that it's something you can have that conversation with way more of your friends than you may have been able to, you know, 10, 15 years ago. Not that being a parent was on your mind, but I can almost guarantee that your people that are 10 years older than you now weren't thinking about these consciously aware parents conversations then.
That's a good thing. That shows that we are improving in some form or facet of having more knowledge and information accessible to us.
Sure.
Do you think that's because people are becoming more conscious, or people, I guess it's the same thing. Never mind. You're right.
Right. You sure?
No, you're good. I was gonna ask, do you think is part of it is women picking better men?
No.
I saw a post on Facebook today. I'm gonna just put it that way.
Wait, what?
Yeah, no.
I saw somebody dragging the dirty laundry out, and she was implicating herself in the post. So I consider that's not the case.
Okay. Do you
Women are still making dumb decisions?
And I was gonna say, do you feel like, was it really that many men not doing it before, or was it just feel like they was perceived as men not doing it?
I think.
Go ahead.
I think it was a large part perception.
Okay.
A large part of perception, just because the nature of things being more visible, and I can think about the relationships that the men in my family have had with their children, their families by extension. I could say it's definitely evolved over time. Like, for example, my great grandfather, he served in, I forget which war it was. I want to say World War II. But when he came back, long story short, he suffered with alcoholism, and that had some obvious implications and muddied the waters of the family of his time. So my grandmother was young, and I mean, it wasn't the best. I would say he wasn't the ideal father after that. And then I can look at other examples, like my great uncle, who is his son, and how he parents my cousin and his grandchildren now. Then I can also look at how my grandfather has been a parent to my dad, and then a grandfather to myself and my sister by extension. And I can see that over time, through generational differences, and I can say that it's improved. And I can see even far as back as like my granddad, he's always been caring in a paternal way. And outside like the obvious implications of circumstances like the ones I just named about the alcoholism, for example, I feel like it wasn't that taboo for a father to care for us. It's just different ways of manifestation. And now we have more information accessible to us, and we see more.
Okay.
So that's why I think it's perception. Well, a large part. Des, you can feel free to counter that or disagree.
No, I think, I like I said, I think it is a perspective thing, just based off of us seeing it more. Like I was saying, more people being able to relate to one another. That's not to say that it hadn't been happening before, but I just think because of social media and things of that nature that we're able to relate to each other a lot more as far as like experiences.
Okay. Yeah,
yeah, I do. So why'd you ask?
No, I was about to go if you didn't.
Oh,
you good?
okay.
I'll save mine for last. Yeah, you good?
All right, that's for last, I guess. So do you feel like as a man you are valued equally in a relationship? The ones that you've been in, or the ones you may currently be in? In terms of thoughtfulness and the effort by both parties?
I'll say yes, because I think what we most common think, because this is forever going to be a constant conversation. I think what we consistently fail to realize is that we sometimes expect what we give in the same format in which we give, and so we're not able to be appreciative of the little things that go into being in a relationship that a woman might do, like the thoughtfulness. Like there's some things that women do that is just within their thoughtful nature, like paying attention to your meal, and then paying, I don't know, there's just women pay attention to a lot of things that you really wouldn't care about, and they'll bring it to your attention, like, yeah, I didn't even realize that, or I didn't even notice that. So I don't know if y'all ever had that experience, but women are very, very detailed as far as when they care for somebody. And I think that level of detail is actually on par with what you may do tangibly. And I think because we oftentimes think that, because you're not providing for me the same way I'm providing for you, that we're not equal. But I think that women bring a lot of factors to a relationship that you're not just going to find within anybody. Like I think a lot of what they do isn't on paper, whereas your tangible items that you're purchasing for them, or the lifestyle that you're providing, or this, that, and the third. I think that that's something that's tangible. Like you can pull receipts on that, but I don't think you can ever pull receipts on like the thoughtfulness and detail that goes into being the woman in a relationship. Because if they weren't being that thoughtful, then it'd be dry. I like it. Let's be honest with it.
Josh, what's your take on that?
Ask the question again.
I was asking, so do you feel like you're valued equally in a relationship in terms of effort and thoughtfulness?
And this goes for like past relationships.
As a man, yeah. Past, current.
No.
You don't?
No, not all of them. No.
Okay.
There was definitely times where she wasn't trying, like she wasn't ready for the relationship. There was time when I wasn't ready for the relationship. So yeah, there was definitely times. I think mostly it happens when we're younger. Like I would say maybe like early college, high school type stuff. It might depend though. But yeah, it hasn't happened to me though. Like, I mean, not all the time though, but it's happened to me as far as like someone not putting their full 100% into it,
Yeah. I would be more inclined to agree with you. Like I see the validity in what Des is saying. But just
I honestly think it's situational. Like I think maybe the people Desmond has come in contact with, maybe they're all like that. He just hasn't connected with them on a certain level to the.
Yeah.
So I agree with what you guys are saying. I just was more or less speaking because I keep hearing it's like the men are never loved unconditionally in the relationship or marriage, and that's more or less what I'm speaking on. Like I've gone through the same things I've gone through. Like don't get me wrong, but I don't ever base my answers off of I won't say I won't ever. I'm not basing that answer off of what I experienced. I'm basing it off of like just what my perspective of that is, because there's times that I felt that in the same exact instances that you guys are feeling, but then I've gone back and I've like looked at it and was like, well, damn, like you don't really ever notice the little things until the little things aren't being done anymore, and the importance of them.
Unless there's little things being done at all.
And I mean, I was more inclined to agree with Josh because I mean, as with you just said, Des, I mean, I've experienced a mixed bag to where they were extremely thoughtful and not. But I can say on average, I would say I've always been the more thoughtful of the two people in terms of just general effort. So it's
feeling like you're doing more to substitute for what they're not doing. Basically, it feels like you're like going at 150% while they're at 50%. You're trying to it feels like you're trying to make up for them.
Yeah, I've definitely experienced that. It's not fun.
Yeah, but I think it's situational. I think as people she's coming up, but no, he said actually that.
You're right.
Yeah. No. But yeah.
Like little things do impress me. Like I remember the first time I was on a date in high school, and the first time she like took me out for my birthday, and that shit just blew my mind. I had never experienced anything like that before, and it stood out. Like I still remember it, and just like the really small things, like
You was a little spoon that night?
No. You're funny. But no, it's like little things. I have experiences to where they really do stand out, but then I've also been in interactions when it was the opposite, to where it was me exerting the majority of the effort when it came to thoughtfulness, like remembering everything. And then in general, I'd like to say that I have a pretty good memory across the board when it comes to people in general. So not just with men versus women, but I think that my memory is a little bit better than the average person you come across. So that may contribute to that too.
I got you. Okay. I had a
So back to
question.
last. Go ahead.
You're done? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a question. It's basically the question I asked on Instagram not too long ago. It kind of goes a little bit with what you said as far as insecurity. But I was going to ask, does needing reassurance mean you're insecure? Because you guys both never answered that question.
I did answer it.
I didn't see you.
Go back and check the polls
Wow.
in your archives.
I don't think I can actually see who actually answered it after.
Okay. Well, I'll answer for you right now. I said yes. Or no, hold on. No.
I was about to say, did not say yes.
So
because I know who said yes.
So you're saying your question is
Does
repeat it again?
Does needing reassurance mean you're insecure?
No. Okay. Now I can formally answer the question now that my answer is appropriate to what I actually think.
Okay.
So I don't think that it makes you needy, just in the sense of reassurance is a natural human need when it comes to interpersonal relationships. And it's a method of feedback by which you know that what you're doing is something that's good. So otherwise, if you aren't getting that recognition, the appreciation, then you don't know whether or not it's effective, whether it's good enough. And so I think that's just part and parcel of you wanting feedback and the basic human desire to have understanding.
Okay.
I mean, of course, everything is
Is insecurity a natural feeling or a natural what you said?
insecurity is a feeling.
As natural as wanting reassurance?
I would say insecurity, that is natural, and it can lead to you needing more reassurance. I think that's the proper relationship between the two. Both of them are natural human emotions, feelings, concepts, phenomena, whatever way you want to call them. They're both natural.
Okay. What do you think, Des?
I'll say no, because the reassurance for most people, I would think, oftentimes allow them to gauge the effort required. Like if you're kind of just going along with going through the motions of things and you're not reassuring your partner, then it's how shit stales. Because reassurance isn't always just like the verbal affirmation that like I'm yours, you're mine. Like a lot of it could be through action and thought.
Yeah.
Which is just basic actions of a relationship. So I don't think anybody that says it's a form of being insecure has a sound argument, because I think it's more or less, if they're saying it is, then I think they should reassess their why.
Or go to therapy. Josh, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, you tend to be the question guy on IG, but I don't think there's a segment where you do your follow-up. So we're going to put you in the hot spot.
I'm going to have you guys going to have to convince me, because I do think it makes you insecure. I'm going to say this. I do think we're all insecure in some way. So I think that's a natural feeling like you was talking about. So I think we all get insecure. And as far as reassurance, I am basing this off the assumption that you're with somebody that's already reassuring you. So you're to the point that you're trying to want reassurance after the person is already like, yeah, we're together. Yeah, they're already doing what they should be doing. You know what I mean? That's how I was basing it off, basically.
That sounds like insecurity speaking, but so the initial part where you defined of the person needing reassurance and the reassurance being provided, that's fine. That's healthy. I would say that's ideal. to where it's a normal need that somebody has and it's being met. But you said when there's still a thirst or desire for something, that implies that there's something bigger within that person that is causing an additional need for reassurance, whether it be their prior experience in the past, maybe they're experiencing depression, maybe they're just unreasonable. Any number of things could be going on there that can contribute to that.
Or their love language is just not being met.
I think that's
that's why I'll never say it's an insecurity thing, because there's probably countless relationships to where people have felt like they've been given their all, and the person has said that it's not, because they just haven't received the actions the way that they were intended.
Right.
And I don't think that's a thing of insecurity. I think that's just more of a form of miscommunication and misunderstanding. Because I guarantee if you have a conversation about it, their actions are going to change to be more in line with how you perceive it or how you want to perceive it.
When we talked to Quabin and Avanu on last season about the love languages, I believe I don't know if that was a central topic of the conversation, but it was brought up. And so it's a well-observed phenomenon in the fact that we tend to love others in the way that we are receptive to love, as opposed to, like we said earlier, asking and then adapting to that. And that's part of the compromise. Like, a lot of people get caught up on the concept of compromise being, okay, so what are you going to do to meet me? And not looking at the flip side of it is, what can I do to meet you? And so there's always going to be a necessary trade-off if you want to be successful in any kind of relationship.
Yeah, that's how I was basing it off of. But if you just like trying to go up to your partner and you communicate like, I need reassurance, basically, like, I don't think you're being insecure. But I was talking about the basis like that your partner is already giving you everything to be reassured about, and then you're still like, oh, so like, why do you like me? Some shit like that. So that's what I was thinking about.
That wasn't your question though.
What?
The question that you asked was framed in the initial part. It didn't have the extra. So
I know.
If you had said, does needing extra reassurance, that would have kind of skewed the question, but it would also been a more accurate depiction of what you were getting at just now.
Yeah, I didn't want to skew the question though. Yeah, I didn't want to skew it. I just wanted to make it regular and have people think about different ways, like, oh, okay. But yeah.
So you will say that the need for reassurance is normative.
Yeah, it's normal, definitely.
But not in the excess.
No, not that. No, not at all. You're insecure if you do that. It's like me asking you, like, why did you want me to be on this podcast? Nigga, we in season 4. Like, what the fuck? Like, why me?
Actually, Josh.
Like, why me? Like, why me, Brian? Am I really that special? Like, come on. Am I really that smart? Like, it's like, come on.
Look, I was going through my contact list, and you're the only name that came up that just stood out with that. Like, now we've been through this.
Yeah, I know. But
that was a very good analogy.
Yeah. Anything else you have?
Yes, sir.
You have
Nah, I'm good.
You have a recommendation at all?
I think I give you all album of the week. Hold up.
Let's go.
I think it's only correct to provide an album of the week, and it is Orange Print by Larry June.
So you could have just
so it's
easy.
It's definitely it's definitely not his best, but I think it has some of the better songs. Like, I think some of his prior work is better as a collective, but I think some of the songs up here are like the best that he's put out. It's kind of like he has like the Currency issue. Like, Currency has been so consistent with what he's been putting out for such a long time that people don't appreciate it when it may sound a little different. But I think it's a well put together project by him.
Nah, when I say the easy one, I thought you was about to go with J. Cole Off Season. Some probably Brian would have said.
I haven't listened to that album in such a long time. I wouldn't.
You said I would have said that, Josh?
Yeah, I feel like you probably would have said
that. Actually, I have.
You was waiting for the album too.
No, I was waiting for the album to come out. Absolutely, but no. I had a different album that I was gonna suggest if Des didn't have one. I can talk about that off air because maybe we need it in the future. But no, it wasn't J. Cole.
Oh, okay. All right, cool.
Great album though.
Is it?
Yeah.
In my humble opinion.
It requires
No,
a
it's good, that's good.
it requires a couple of listens, but yeah.
I was about to
I think
say, I had to listen to it at least like a couple times. I'm not gonna lie to really like it, but yeah. And I think some of the songs are too short on it, but yeah, it's whatever.
I didn't like. I listened to it completely the first time through, and I liked it. It's like some songs I need to listen to multiple times more than others. But like, for example, the intro, for example, it kind of threw me off with Cameron being on there because, to my knowledge, Cameron and J. Cole don't have any kind of relationship in the past. But it was cool. And then Amari was probably my favorite off the album. Between that and Pride as the Devil.
Nah, I love a good 21 Savage feature on the J. Cole song, man. I don't know what it is with them, man, but they just mesh together. So My Life is one of my favorites up there.
Yeah, I'd definitely had to listen to it a couple times though. I mean, I liked a few songs, but I felt like there was, of course, too small, like too little. And I felt like the Climb Back up there, what didn't really fit on the album. I felt like it wasn't really made for that album. It was made for another album. So
I had that feeling too, though. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, it's whatever.
I always saw the Climb Back as a single. Because he released that. Yeah, I'm saying like just a standalone. I didn't think it was part of another project. I just thought that was something that was.
Oh no, yeah. He originally said it was off the Fall Off, like it was the first single off the Fall Off, but he didn't release the Fall Off. He released the Off Season. So, but yeah. If you guys liked the episode, though, don't forget to hit the like button. We're gonna see you guys next week. I promise.
But while you're here, be sure to check out other great content from the Breakdown crew, including previous episodes of the podcast, Joshua vs. Movies, Joshua vs. Music, and of course, haven't forgotten about my plant lovers, Feel the Love. Just check out this begonia.